Thank you for having us here at Waikereru. It's a beautiful morning.
Yeah, isn't it gorgeous?
I mean, we've got kereru flying past us over here. The mist is coming up from the forest. What an amazing place. Do you love living within a forest?
This place is like a big cosmic hug. There's hills right round us, you know. When we arrived, it was all pasture. It was absolutely bare.
Like normal sheep and beef farms?
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
How did you go about getting a forest established from dry grasslands into something that now has moist soils, that has a hoodoo layer, that has a canopy that's emerged, and all the birds are flocking in? What are some of the tools that you use to bring this back?
Well, we were really lucky because we had this beautiful stretch of old bush right along the edge of the Waimata here. The first thing we did was we took advice from Doc and we fenced it. And then all the weeds started coming back. So we got in touch with Steve Sawyer, as it turned out, of EcoWorks. And Steve came up and he said, I think we could do something here. I think we can do something here. And so we began. We planted a big collection of these large groves of berry-bearing trees for the birds, right along the foothills. That's all cyclone boulder slump. And it worked. The birds fly. And they started, as soon as those trees started cropping, then they flew up into the hills. And they planted the hills for us largely.
When I come to Waikereru, I see a lot of plants that I don't see in other plantings. And is that something you've consciously chosen to do, is represent plants that otherwise wouldn't get a look in most plantings?
I think we've been just so lucky with the people. You know, first started off meeting up with Steve Sawyer, and of course he was someone that had trained with Don Merton and people like that, and so he could see what was missing in the ecosystems here. And then we met Graham, of course, Graham Atkins, Malcolm Rutherford, Philip Smith. I mean, we've got these people who are real tohunga for this kind of work. And what we decided to do was, over time, because it took us years, you know, we've been here 25 years now, you learn bit by bit from all these amazing people.
You've been very instrumental in this whole vision of thinking like a forest, this whole vision of recloaking papatōnuku. If we really want to build resilience into our landscape, we are really serious about having a tapestry of forests across our country.
When we're talking about recloaking papatōnuku, we're talking about weaving. And it's about weaving farming and horticulture, making sure that we've got proper cloak on the erodible slopes and around the waterways. And I think we need that all across the country. You know, we need to make sure the productive land stays productive, the communities stay thriving. We don't want to cover the whole place with, you know, it's not like pines. You don't want to just stick them anywhere because they're going to make some money. It's a matter of looking after the land and weaving it beautifully. You know, it should be beautiful as well as productive. And I think that's the vision.
Waimata was particularly hit hard with the cyclone and recent weather events, but this place held up pretty well. What did you notice when it came to the resilience of a forested landscape versus a non-forested landscape?
Well, you're right. The Waimata River was the river that delivered all those logs that just about took out the bridges in town here in Gisborne and landed up all over the beaches and in the bay. And the thing that happened here at Waikereru is because we have this stand of surviving native bush, the roots of that stand of forest, which is really old, that held the riverbank together. And you'll see, you just go around the corner and where it's actually a dock reserve, but it never was fenced and therefore got grazed out. And that just fell into the river. It was scoured out. And that took the road with it. The hills here, we only had one small slip, and that's about 12 years of regeneration. And most of that's just come back by itself. Although when you walk into it, there's life of all different kinds of, you know, it's amazing how diverse it is in the understory.
I was involved in the cyclone cleanup for Waimata catchment group, as you know. Up in the headwaters, we saw whole swathes of pine forest falling off the hill into the river. And some people would say, oh, that's a forest. As you and I know, 80 million years of diverse forests and those interconnected roots of different lengths and that hoodoo layer sitting on top of it.
Yes.
That's a forest. And that's the forest that we saw stay on the hill.
The thing that I've learnt about natural forest is that it's layered, so everything's doing a job. Holding water, for a time of drought and then releasing it into the creeks. So our creeks don't dry up since we've revegetated the place, and they used to. And then, as you say, you go to the understory, and you've got the kaukau and all these, and then the little wee plants that are cloaking the ferns, and then you go underground, and there's a whole nother architecture under there.
That mycelium network, it's incredible.
All of that. And so when you're trying to restore a ngahere, you have to think of all the different elements. Sometimes when people are putting things around streams, you see it's a very limited range of plants.
Which is beautiful and it's nice, but it doesn't have the complexity which resilience needs. I've got some really big questions around the economics of recloaking papatūānuku. A lot of our farmers are cash poor and time poor.
Yes.
A lot of our Māori trust blocks don't have the same ability to access finance that other landowners may. It's a complex beast. If we had a vision around how we can make this happen for Aotearoa, what does it rely on? What governmental support, what private sector support, and what individual support do you think is needed for our vision of recloaking papatūānuku?
Well, for me, I'd far prefer that the finance actually comes locally, because in the end, it's going to be a question about who is the guardian of this place. I do think that the government and any government ought to take responsibility for the future of our beautiful islands, because that's the future of our people as well. Some of the old farmers, they'd say to you, if you look after the land will look after you.
And if you keep looking after the land will look after your children to come. When it comes to tairāwhiti, recloaking papatūānuku is something that we all want. But how do we implement it here at home?
Well, that's where I think this idea of a gold standard nature-based carbon credit can do the trick. Because I know from, talking with the farmers, it's hard, it's really, sheep and beef farming is hard at the moment economically. It's not as though they've got a whole lot of money to spend on trapping and fencing and things like that. And we've managed to raise money to enable them to actually do it. But you've got to keep on, as you know, this sort of work never stops. And so we need a long-term vision. The farmers love looking after their land in this way, and still then being able to make a living. And if they can make a living partly by recloaking papatūānuku around the waterways and on those highly erodible parts of the farm.
In those less productive landscapes.
Totally. I mean, the place would look beautiful, the rivers would run clean, the birds would be singing, the people would have a livelihood. I love tairāwhiti. It's already a kind of paradise, but it's been spoiled in many ways, and it doesn't have to be. We can make it flower again.
We just need the financial models and the political backing to achieve this great vision for our region. If I was to ask you what thinking like a forest meant to you, what would you say?
I would say that, when I was with Eruera and those kaumātua, for them, the ngāko's the mind-heart. It's thinking, but it's also loving. For me, it's not about carbon solely. It's about everything that happens. It's about the life on the land and in the water. And if you don't think like that, I don't believe you can bring it back to life.